Welcome to Tapped In. My name is David Figueroa-Martinez of DFM Coaching, and today we're going to be discussing who's left the real test of Jiu-Jitsu. So Chris Hodder has this famous phrase, which I'm probably going to butcher. It's not who's best, it's who's left, something around those lines. And the idea being that oftentimes we're going to roll or be partnered up with or be around people who are far more talented than us. And everyone has this weird vision or view of like, if you're talented, if you're athletic, if you have these quote unquote God-given talents and abilities, that's going to be the true test of whether you're going to be successful or not in jiu-jitsu. And in a lot of ways, it can, but it doesn't always necessarily. And in most cases, it doesn't at all. Jiu-jitsu is this weird thing where the nerds, and I don't mean that derogatorily, but the nerds love the game and the puzzle that is jiu-jitsu. They love it. It's, even though it's super athletic and we haven't always found a way to dive into like football, basketball, wrestling. But for some reason with jiu-jitsu, that puzzle is everything to us. And we dive into that and we have so much fun with that puzzle and the constant shifts of what's going on. And then you have to adapt to what just happened and solve that puzzle in real time as it might be adapting into another puzzle. That is actually where the talent is. It's understanding that your athletic abilities are great and they might make jiu-jitsu easier for you in certain ways. They might make jiu-jitsu easier for you early on when you're competing or when you're developing your game. But it's a bit of an illusion. And what I mean by that is the most talented people that I rolled with over the years never made it to purple, let alone brown and black. The people that I rolled with that I was like, dude, this guy, he's going to be a problem in another year or two, never made it that year or two. And the reasons for that are a whole nother issue. But if all things are equal and we have a super welcoming environment, supportive environment, coach that's doing all they can to make sure that you are getting better and that you're loving what you're doing, that athleticism is a little bit of an illusion. It's a little bit of it's a scapegoat in some ways. It's a thing that people will rely on as a crutch. It's like a tank rolling down the street and kind of running out of gas. Then it's useless. So it's a weird thing to kind of explain. But if you've been in the sport long enough, you will have encountered a plethora of people that you just felt like these people were going to kill it in jiu-jitsu. Whether they had wrestling backgrounds or they came from the military or they just had a certain temperament to it. And then they just sort of fizzled. They disappeared. They were no longer around. They don't train as much and they're just not consistent. I've had so many training partners that had this uncanny ability to learn jiu-jitsu so quickly and to adapt it to what they needed it to be and then continue to move just effortlessly, almost gliding through positions and class and just having this ability to just look really good and sharp. And they would train 6-7 times a week for a couple of weeks, maybe a month or two, and then they would disappear. And then they would be gone for a bit, for a while, and then they would come back, and then they would repeat it all over again. And you understood that you could look at a guy or a woman and be like, if they committed themselves to this, they would be on another path. They'd be a whole nother stratosphere. And then you're there chugging along like the turtle or tortoise, and you're not training as much. You're not training maybe as intently or as intense. You're maybe not competing. Maybe you are. Doesn't really matter. But you're consistent and you're going in regardless of whether you have the idea that you're plateaued, whether you have life distractions, the ups and downs of jiu-jitsu as they are, or you have injuries. you're still showing up in a way that allows you to learn, one, about jiu-jitsu, and two, about yourself. And you're just plugging along at your own pace, your own path. You're not necessarily worried about everything else. It doesn't look as flashy. It doesn't look as intense. It doesn't look as sharp as player A, but you're coming regularly. You're going all the time. You're pushing yourself to meet those consistency goals above everything else. That's massive. And when I was coming up, I had a very specific schedule that I had, and I was trying to balance work, life, and spouse. I don't have any kids. And that allowed me to put things into the little boxes that they needed to be in without having to overextend myself. And there were times where I trained more. I had a competition or something, so I did more. And there were times where life got a little busy, and then I had to train a little bit less. But over the course of my career, it has been a solid 3 to 4 times a week. It was never, I never had long stretches where it was just, I'm training like a madman. It just wasn't a thing for me. And I knew, and I saw people who were getting better than me rather quickly. I saw people who were maybe rivals of mine, and then they got better, and they got promoted to the next belt, and they got further along than I did. And they, I mean, it was just part of the process. And I had to understand that my consistency in the schedule that I had was going to finally get me there. It just wasn't going to get me there maybe at their pace. And more importantly, it was going to get me there safely. Sometimes you train so hard for such a short time, and you come up with an injury that alters your entire career or your life or whatever it might be. So for me, it was about being able to continue to train long periods of time. In my case now, 14 years. I want to be able to train until I'm in my 60s, 70s, if I'm lucky. It's going to look a whole lot different. But I'm hoping that this is a lifelong thing for me, and that I can teach well until my old age. And I want to be able to be around the sport and around people that want to get better at the sport and that love the sport. And I don't want to ever diverse from that. I don't want to be able to get to a certain stage in my life and be so banged up that I can't do what I love. So there's an element of, I need to train in a way that allows me to survive this difficult game of jiu-jitsu. And there are moments where sometimes you have a certain injury and you're just like, you want to get on the mat, but you need to tell yourself, let me just take a couple weeks off. Maybe I come in and only watch. Maybe I come in and take notes. Maybe I come in and help the gym a little bit. I'm around the thing that I love. I'm around people. But let me take a break from actively sparring and actively drilling. When you can do that, and you can do that intelligently, you don't exacerbate some of the injuries that you're collecting and picking up. You don't make them worse than what they are and then become bigger issues later. And you allow yourself to heal. You start working other aspects of your game, like your brain, and like, how do I teach? How does my coach teach? How does the guy or girl who's running the kids class, how are they teaching? So that when you have these moments of like, hey, I'm injured, I'm banged up, I can't do what I really want to do, you're still involved in the program. You're still involved in the things that you want to do anyway. So it's really important to measure out how your training is, both when you're healthy and injured. Make sure that it does not become something that is so imbalanced with your life that someone in your life then asks you to potentially give it up. And I understand the idea of having a partner say to you, hey, it's me or jiu-jitsu, is really fucked up. But there are a lot of relationships where people get to a point, not even just something, where they're so focused and honed in on this hobby that they have, whether it's video games, playing cards, being out with friends, jiu-jitsu, doesn't matter what it is, where they focus so much time on it that it hurts their personal lives. And then they're faced with having to make decisions that are going to end up hurting their jiu-jitsu careers or their hobby, like whatever that hobby is, jiu-jitsu or otherwise. So it's really important to have a balance for yourself and your family, so that people in your family understand that this is a large part of his or her life and their need to have that there. But they're also conscious enough to understand that the family is super important as well. So if you can balance that out, the chances of you making it to black belt are much higher. If you can balance out your risk to injury, the chances of you getting to black belt are much higher. Take care of yourself, both emotionally, physically, spiritually. Make sure that you're in a balanced state when it comes to all the responsibilities you have, and you yourself are a responsibility as well. So as someone who has watched countless people come and go from the sport, I can tell you right now, I was not the most athletic. I was not the most dangerous submission artist. I was not the most proficient grappler. I was not the most, like I said, athletic. I wasn't the fastest. I have not played organized sports very much throughout my life. I did one season of track in senior year just to get ready for basic training. I did not play organized sports in that manner. So for me, someone who had come in, who I'm 5'4", when I started, I was a chunky 200 pounds. I did no weights. I ate out a lot when it came to like junk food. I was sedentary. I was not the example of someone that would have made it to black belt if I came through the door. But what separated me from everyone else was just the fact that I was okay with sucking for a long time if I needed to. I was okay with not being the best person in the room. I was okay with asking questions over the majority of my career. And I was okay with the process. I never got mad at the process. I never got pissed off at the process in the sense of like, oh, when's it going to be my turn? Every day that I left the gym, I was happy. I got to roll. I got to train. I got to do the thing that I love. I seldomly left the gym mad at myself or disappointed with my performance or angry about one thing or another. I left happy that I got to do the thing that I did. And if you can frame jiu-jitsu in that manner, a lot of the hurdles that people come across with like plateauing and mad that you're not being promoted or mad at yourself for not performing the right way, all that goes away. You just sort of understand that this process is eternal for as long as I can do this physically. And I'm going to have a lot of setbacks. I'm going to have moments where I succeed, and I'm going to have moments almost immediately after success where I'm going to fail. You've all had the high of like submitting someone with a cool submission that you've been working on for a really long time, and then turning around and getting submitted the very next round. We've all been there. And so it's loving the process and loving what your ups and downs and understanding that you have to balance yourself, and then finally making it to black belt, and also understanding that black belt isn't the finish line. It's just another hurdle, another peak. And if you can frame things that way, you start to understand that my ego isn't as important. If I lose this round against this blue belt isn't important. If I'm addressing these things as in, what am I going to get out of this loss, this win, this mistake I made? Then you address all of your shortcomings much better than you would someone else who's super talented and maybe has an ego because of the talent. You don't have to be that version. You don't have to be super talented. I'm not, never have been. My talent, if anything, was just that I didn't quit. I decided that no matter how bad moments were, I was not going to quit on my worst day. It's really, 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 really hard to quit on like a high. It really is. Hey, you won worlds. You just got this belt. You won a gold at a local competition. It's really hard to want to quit on those days because you're on a high. Now, the easy ones are, I feel like I'm in a plateau. I feel like I'm constantly getting beat by the lower belts. I feel like I'm chasing something that's never going to get to me. Those are lows. Those are bad days. And if you can frame your mind around, let me not quit on my worst day. it's really hard to quit on yourself when you're on your high. And so then you just start figuring things out. Start figuring out the things that you don't do very well, the things that you wish you could do better. But by the time you get to this, the vast majority, I think, people that get to black belt were not the most athletic, were not the most mentally sound. And I don't mean that like in mental health. I mean the most confident. I mean the most steady. All of us that made it to black belt had these really big highs and really low points in our careers where we all wanted to quit at some point. I wanted to quit a couple times. And then there's all these doubts that creep in. So all of that is natural. It's just about how you handle it. And if you can make it to black belt and then beyond, it's because you did not quit on your worst days and you did not allow yourself to fall in line with a negative thought or a negative emotion. And it very little has to do with talent. And some people can argue that not succumbing to those negative moments is probably a talent. I can see that. But really, this is about you persevering, all those moments of doubt, bad moments where you get submitted. Maybe you got submitted in a competition really badly early in a round. And you want to quit, but you don't. You push through, and then you quit at this other thing, or you want to quit at this other moment because now life has maybe gotten really hectic, but you somehow kept training once or twice a week, and then you make it through that, and then you're back to normal. So really, it's about just accepting that there's going to be moments where it's really fucked up. And that's okay. If you have any questions, please hit me up at DFM9. I'm always big for answering questions and covering topics and maybe helping people along that feel like they don't have anyone to have conversations with. So please hit me up. If you want to work with me, dfmcoaching.com or through my DMs. Until next time, thank you so much.